When I was 18, my parents handed me a wrinkled 20 and said, "My sister deserved the future, not me." No whisper, no hesitation, just a verdict in the rain. My father's voice was steel. My mother's hand was cold, and the door clicked shut behind me like the world had decided I wasn't worth keeping. I stood there, soaked to the bone, suitcase at my feet, the porch light dying above me. 5 years later, that same light flickered again. Only this time, I was the one behind the desk. And my sister was the one asking for a chance. Before I tell you how the circle closed, tell me, where are you listening from? So I know I'm not the only one who's ever been told they didn't deserve a future. Our house in Bloomington always smelled like lemon cleaner and engine oil. My mother's obsession with appearances and my father's with control. From the outside, we looked normal. Inside, we were a quiet hierarchy with my sister Laya on top, and me somewhere below the fold. Dad, Martin Avery, ran a small auto shop after leaving his teaching job. He believed sweat was proof of worth. Mama Lane kept the family books like she kept her emotions. Neat columns, no room for error. And Laya, she was their miracle. Pretty, articulate. A PR major with a 1,000-watt smile. Every compliment in that house curved toward her like light bending to its source. I learned early that my place was the folding chair at the edge of the dinner table. Metal, cold, legs unsteady, easy to pack away. When Leia turned 16, she got a used Honda with a red ribbon on it. "I got a bookstore gift card," Mom said. "You love reading, right?" I said. "Thank you," pretending the word didn't burn. But the day the envelope came, the one with the blue university seal, I believed for a second that the script might change. I had worked after school, tutored kids, fixed old appliances just to save money. When I tore that envelope open and saw "Congratulations," I thought maybe they'd see me. That evening, I stood in the kitchen holding the letter like a flag. "I got into Indiana State," I said. "They gave me a scholarship. It's not full, but..." Dad didn't even look up from the newspaper. "We can't pay for 2 tuitions," he said flatly. Mom sighed, sorting bills on the counter. "Laya's pre-law is already expensive. You'll have to be realistic." "Realistic?" I repeated. "I've worked for this. I can cover the rest." Dad set the paper down, his voice turning sharp. "Then cover all of it. You're 18, Olivia. Time to be independent." Laya's phone buzzed. She smiled down at it, then said softly, "She's overreacting." That word, overreacting, was the fuse. I'd swallowed their silence for years. But that night I said what I'd never dared. "You've never even asked what I want." The table went still. Mom's hand trembled once before she reached into her purse, pulled out a $20 bill, and pressed it into my palm. "Be independent," she said. Dad didn't look up again. I packed that night. One suitcase, a few notebooks, my acceptance letter folded in my jacket. When I walked out, rain had already started. Laya stood at the window, her reflection blurred against the glass. She didn't wave. That's how it began. With a door closing and the sound of thunder swallowing my name. The first night alone, I learned how cold metal can feel. The bus stop bench was slick with rain, and the 20 inches my pocket was already damp. Every car that passed splashed me a little smaller. I kept staring at the letter from Indiana State, the ink starting to blur, the words still trying to mean something. By midnight, the streetlights buzzed like they were shivering, too. I told myself I'd find a way. A job, a room, anything. But the truth was, I didn't even have an address to write on a form. By the third night, my body ached with fever. The air felt sharp in my lungs. I remember a man's voice cutting through the hum of tires. "Hey, you okay?" He was maybe in his 50 seconds. Gray hair, kind eyes. His name was David Reed, a long-haul truck driver who'd stopped for coffee. He gave me his jacket, called for help, and stayed until the ambulance came. The hospital lights were too bright, too clean. A nurse clipped a tag around my wrist. Name: Olivia Avery. Address: unknown. That word hit harder than pneumonia. Unknown. When I woke, there was a styrofoam cup of orange juice on the tray, and a 20 tucked neatly under it. The nurse said the man left it for me. Said, "You'll need it more than he does." They discharged me 2 days later, still weak, with a pamphlet for Haven House shelter. It sat wedged between a laundromat and a pawn shop, peeling paint, flickering sign, but warmth inside. The woman who ran it, Ruth Nolan, looked at me the way no one had in a long time, straight in the eye. "You get one bed, one lock, one chance to rebuild. That's all we ask," she said. So, I cleaned floors, folded sheets, scrubbed bathrooms. My hands cracked from bleach, but work felt like proof I existed. The other women called me the quiet one. I kept my head down, saved meal vouchers, collected job flyers. One afternoon, Ruth pinned a paper to the board. "Help wanted. Alvarez's Diner, 5th and Pine." It was handwritten, the kind of ad people walk past without reading. But I saw it and thought, maybe this is where it starts. The next morning, I walked there in borrowed shoes. The diner smelled like coffee and burnt toast, the kind of place that didn't pretend to be anything else. Behind the counter stood Elena Alvarez, sleeves rolled up, hair streaked. She glanced at me once, saw my thrift store coat, and the hospital band still faint on my wrist. "You ever wait tables?" "No," I said. "But I learned fast." She tossed me an apron. "Good. Start with the syrup bottles. If you last the week, I'll pay you." That night, as I wiped the counter and listened to rain tapping the window, I realized something. Silence doesn't have to mean defeat. Sometimes it's just the sound of rebuilding. Days at Alvarez's diner bled together. Mornings thick with the smell of bacon grease. Nights echoing with the hiss of the coffee machine. My arms ached. My feet blistered. But for the first time, exhaustion felt clean. It was mine. Elena Alvarez didn't waste words. She'd correct me without looking up. "You missed a spot." Customers noticed details. Her tone was rough, but her eyes carried a quiet respect that grew as I stopped making excuses and started fixing things before she asked. Each shift, I watched how the place worked, who came in when, which orders piled up, which supplies ran out first. Chaos had patterns. By the second week, I started reorganizing. Salt shakers refilled by section, condiments sorted by delivery date, invoices stacked by supplier. I scribbled everything in a cheap notebook I kept in my apron pocket. One morning, a delivery truck backed into the alley late again. The driver, Ben Carter, jumped out, humming under his breath. "Sorry, traffic," he said, rolling crates through the back door. I helped him unload. Eggs here, flour there, perishables up front. He watched me for a moment, then grinned. "You always sort stuff like that?" "Makes it easier to find things later," I said. "You've got a head for systems," he replied. It was the first compliment that didn't feel like charity. That night, I stayed after closing, sketching a better delivery schedule on napkins, lines and circles, arrows connecting suppliers. When Elena found it on the counter the next morning, she studied it for a long moment. "You did this?" I nodded, nervous. She folded it and slipped it into her apron. "Keep thinking like that. The world runs on chaos. People like you keep it moving." Weeks turned into months. The diner became a living lesson in logistics. I built spreadsheets on the shelter's old computer, tracking supply flow, mapping routes, calculating hours. When Ben's truck broke down one day, I rearranged the week's deliveries over the phone. Everything arrived on time. He called me the human GPS. It made me laugh, but it also made something inside me shift. Maybe I wasn't rebuilding my life. Maybe I was designing it. When Everline Freight opened a clerk position, Ben brought me the flyer himself. "You'd be perfect for this," he said. I hesitated. "They won't hire someone without a degree." "Try anyway," he insisted. So, I did. I printed a 2-page resume that smelled faintly of diner coffee. The manager, Tom Whitaker, asked simple questions. Organization, communication, problem solving. I answered honestly. No embellishments. He leaned back, studying me. "You've got no degree, but you've got instinct. We can work with that." That sentence changed everything. At Everline, I learned what control felt like. Systems, routes, data. The world finally had structure, and I could read it. Within a year, I became the one rewriting those routes, fixing the inefficiencies no one else saw. That was the moment I understood I didn't need their table. I was building an entire network. It took 5 years to turn that diner notebook into an empire. Emerge Operations Group started as a borrowed desk in a drafty office above a print shop. Just me and a second-hand laptop. Every invoice, every call, every sleepless night was one more brick in the wall between who I'd been and who I was becoming. By 23, that wall had a skyline view of Seattle. My company trained small businesses to run like giants. Fair pay, efficient systems, no wasted potential. I kept a few reminders framed on my office wall, the hospital wristband marked unknown address, and the wrinkled $20 bill my mother had pressed into my hand, a relic of what it cost to be forgotten. That morning, Maya, my HR manager, appeared at my door with her tablet. New candidate for the operations coordinator position, she said. Strong background, 3 years in PR logistics. She paused, squinting at the screen. Name's Laya Avery. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. Then the air shifted, heavier somehow. I didn't look up. I just said, schedule her for Tuesday. Tuesday arrived with steady rain, soft and rhythmic against the windows. I came in early, straightened the papers on my desk, then stared at the framed 20. The ink had faded into a ghost of green, but the memory was sharp as ever. At 9 on the dot, Maya knocked once before opening the door. She's here. Send her in. The click of heels on the polished floor. That same confident rhythm I'd once envied when she used to walk down our hallway in Bloomington, basking in our parents' attention. When the door opened, Laya stepped inside, composed, elegant, hair pinned the same way Mom used to do it for her recitals. She smiled politely. Good morning. Morning, I said. Please, have a seat. She didn't recognize me. Of course she didn't. To her, I was a ghost wearing success like armor. Maya did the formal introduction, unaware of the history bleeding into the room. This is Miss Olivia Avery, founder and CEO. The name landed between us like a spark. Laya blinked, a small tremor passing through her fingers as she adjusted her folder. Avery, she echoed softly, unsure whether to connect the dots. I gestured toward the chair. Let's begin. Her resume was solid on paper, at least. She spoke about project management, team coordination, leadership under pressure. Every word was rehearsed, a mask she'd probably worn for years. I listened, letting silence fill the gaps between sentences until she began to shift in her seat. Finally, I asked, tell me about a time you had to handle conflict. She hesitated. Well, at my last company, there was a staff dispute. I had to enforce fairness, make sure everyone got what they deserved. I leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Fairness, I repeated, my tone calm, measured. That's an interesting word. What does it mean to you? She met my gaze, the first flicker of confusion in her eyes. It means making sure everyone has the same chance. Everyone? Yes, she said quickly. Everyone. The word hung there, sharp and unsteady. Then her eyes drifted to the wall behind me. She saw the frames, the wristband, the 20. I watched the exact moment recognition dawned. Her breath caught. The color drained from her face. Her voice cracked. Olivia. The sound of my name from her mouth felt both foreign and familiar. I leaned back in my chair. We're here to discuss your qualifications, I said evenly. For a second, she couldn't speak. Her hands trembled as she closed the folder on her lap. I didn't know. I thought that I didn't survive. I finished quietly. Her eyes filled. We were told you left. I wanted to. I cut her off with a small shake of my head. This isn't about the past, Miss Avery. This is a professional setting. She swallowed hard, trying to find her footing again. You've done well, she managed. So have you, I said softly. You've learned how to sound sincere. The room went silent, except for the rain whispering against the glass. I didn't mean, she started, but I raised a hand. I'm not angry. I said. Anger was a luxury I couldn't afford. I built something instead. Her tears broke then, quick and quiet. Mom and Dad, they miss you. They regret everything. I studied her for a moment, every piece of the old hierarchy replaying in my mind. Her ribboned car, my folding chair, her applause, my silence. They made their choices, I said finally. And so did you. Laya's voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't stop them. I should have. You didn't have to, I replied. That's the thing about silence. It's complicity dressed as comfort. She nodded slowly, the weight of years pressing down. Are you going to hire me? I looked down at her resume, then back at her. That depends, I said. Can you follow leadership that values fairness over favoritism? I can try. Good, I said. Because that's the only thing we build here. Fairness. When she left, Maya slipped back in, uncertain. So, what do you think? I glanced at the window. Rain streaked the glass in silver lines, just like that night 5 years ago. Give her the position, I said finally. Maya blinked. You're sure? Everyone deserves a chance, I murmured. Even the ones who once denied you yours. That evening, after the office emptied, I stood by the window, watching the lights blur through the rain. Somewhere out there, my sister was driving home, probably replaying every word, maybe realizing that forgiveness doesn't always sound like mercy. Sometimes it just sounds like boundaries. I touched the frame on the wall. The $20 bill, flattened and fragile under glass. They gave me a door slam, I thought. I built an open one. The phone buzzed on my desk. Mom calling. I let it ring once, twice, then pressed silence. The sound faded, replaced by the hum of rain and city noise below. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like peace. The next morning, sunlight broke through the clouds, turning the rain on my office window into a shimmer. For once, the city looked calm, like it had exhaled with me. Laya showed up for her first day early, nervous, carrying a notebook instead of pride. When I passed her in the hallway, she stopped. Thank you for giving me a chance, she said softly. I nodded. Earn it, I replied, not unkindly. She smiled faintly, like someone relearning a language they used to speak. Throughout the day, I watched her work. Quiet, deliberate, unsure of her footing, but trying. And somewhere inside me, something unknotted. Not forgiveness exactly, just release. Later, when the office was empty again, I stood at my desk and looked at the three things that built my life: the hospital wristband, the $20 bill, and the company logo framed between them. They once marked failure, pity, and survival. Now they meant legacy. I picked up the framed 20, my reflection blending with it in the glass. Unknown address was no longer who I was. I had roots now, a company, a purpose. I placed it back carefully, turned off the lights, and whispered into the quiet. The debt's been paid in full. That weekend I drove back to Bloomington for the first time in 5 years. The town looked smaller, the roads narrower, but the old bus stop was still there. Same dented bench, same flickering light. I laid a small bouquet on the seat, then placed the framed 20 beside it. This is where they ended me, I whispered, and where I began. The air smelled like wet pavement and second chances. I stood there for a long time, not waiting for anyone to show up. Just listening to the rain hit the metal roof. It didn't sound cruel anymore. When I turned to leave, dawn was breaking, pale gold spilling over the empty street. Because everyone deserves a future, even the ones told they didn't. If this story found you, share it. Tell me where you're listening from. You're not alone.